My name's Dr. Niles Calder. Please nod your head if you can understand me.
So what is this place?
My home. A safe place for you. Others like you to heal. Cliff Steele, Larry Traynor.
What's your story?
I can't control this thing inside of me. I flew airplanes.
Hold on, there's something up here.
You promised things would change after we moved here. You said there'd be no more late night beers with the guys.
Hi, welcome everyone. This is episode 68 of the Comics in Motion podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Chris Phelps, and my good friend and colleague is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi, Chris, and hello to our listeners out there. Welcome to Comics in Motion. What we like to do here is we like to review movies and TV shows that are based on comic books. Myself, I'll be reviewing from the perspective of a long-time comic book reader.
And I'll be reviewing from the TV and movie perspective.
And what we also like to do is we also like to spoil the hell out of everything we review. So if you haven't watched our choice of the week, then we'd advise you to proceed with caution. And remember, with an average podcast comes no responsibility. And what we also love is when you can head over to Apple Podcasts or your podcast catcher of choice and drop us a 5-star review. This really helps us to grow the show and gets us out to other listeners. Now, Chris, I know you've seen it because you ping me on Twitter about it. What did you make to the new Joker trailer?
Oh, Dave, outstanding for me. Outstanding. I know it's a trailer. I know we've been burnt before with trailers on certain things, especially with some of the DC stuff. But this looks like we're actually getting something that's close to the Heath Ledger Joker, Dave. Absolutely brilliant. The music was outstanding. I honestly, Hotline Thinker, the only thing I've said, and I've been consistent with this, is it's his age. For me, it's just a weird timeline wherever this is going to be set. But either way, I'm so intrigued to watch this in October when it comes out, Dave. So intrigued. I don't know about yourself, but as a non-comic book fan, and I know we spoke about this, I did get the Killing Joke feel to it, Dave. And that's obviously you've got to take full credit there because it's something we did review, and I have read some of the Killing Joke comic when we did it a few months ago. So, I mean, did you feel the same, Dave, or what did you think of it?
I guess the first thought was, actually, you know what? This looks all right. Because we've discussed in the past, and I've said, well, I don't understand where this fits into everything. We've got a Joker in Gotham, okay. You know, the TV universe seems to be kept completely separate from the movies. So, okay, we'll just focus on the movies. But what about Jared Leto, though? What's happening to him? You know, so I was just unclear, and I guess I'm still a bit unclear. Is this just a standalone movie? Or is it, you know, are we going to see Joaquin Phoenix's Joker appear in other movies? And I think I almost need to say to myself, just get over it. Just watch the movie and try and enjoy the movie. Because, again, that's kind of consistent with what we've discussed in the last few weeks, isn't it? That Warner Brothers are going to focus very much more on the individual movies and not worry about connecting up that universe.
Yeah, and to be fair, that would make absolute complete sense, Dave, more than anything, because we've said this before. You've got Jared Leto out there somewhere along the line, Suicide Squad. You know, we've got the Birds of Prey film that's actually being made now, which is the Harley Quinn origin story as such. So I don't know where it fits in. Is it going to be a precursor to the new Batman film? I'm not sure. But either way, David, it's really, really well put together trailer. It really is. And something that I think DC need this more than anything, I think, as well. So it sets a nice sort of horror tone to it, if I'm being honest, Dave.
It looks very dark, doesn't it? And I think, you know, I know my lad is quite interested in watching a Joker movie, but I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to be for him.
No. That's true. Now, also, something that I wanted to mention on the show, Dave, and it's something we talked about privately, and obviously we are comic book fans. You're the comic book fan, I'm the movie fan, but I'm fully aware of the world in which we watch and review content for this podcast. And the question I wanted to ask, Dave, for you and anyone out there, and obviously get in contact with us at comicsinmotionpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter, comicsinmotionp, and tell me I'm wrong, but do the audiences or the casual fan out there actually care whether something's been made by Marvel or DC? Obviously, to us, and it's something we've talked about extensively, and other people online, fellow podcasters, fellow Twitter followers, Twitter groups that we're in, it's all about, Marvel's better than DC, and obviously DC looks like it's on the upturn. But for me, I genuinely don't think there's a lot of people out there knows the difference between where Superman is in his universe to say where Spider-Man is in his, and you do get questions like, well, why can't they team up and stuff like that? I know in this day and age it might sound really daft, like, come on, but people are not invested. They just like the films. So I'm not sure whether DC saw an upturn with Aquaman and it saw an upturn with Shazam as well. I know it's only just officially came out in the UK and across the world, but the testing has been fantastic. So obviously they're going to make a lot of money. And we also know Captain Marvel, again, has broke $1 billion. So they're all there. People love the superhero genre. And my question to you, Dave, is do you think people actually know or care about who the origin of the comics are from, whether it's DC or Marvel?
I think there's different grades of people, and I think and in terms of how much they care, I think your casual cinema goer probably doesn't care. They possibly, they'll recognize maybe the differences between, if they go and watch Venom, you get the DC credits roll in. If you go to a Marvel movie, you see the Marvel credits roll in. Maybe you'll pay attention to that. But I don't know, when you watched your favorite movies, let's say back in the 80s, did you really care about whether you got the lion, giving the roar before the film, or, the big muscly bloke
with the gong?
With the gong.
Well, no, that was going, Dave.
You didn't watch it and go, oh, we're in for a good one now.
I wonder where we were going then, Dave. The big muscly bloke, yeah. So,
with the gong, with the G.
Yeah. You were saying, what movies have you been watching, Mr. Horrocks? But anyway, no, I understand that. I understand, and I think it's more people have their, like I always mention that you've been more Marvel orientated, I've been more DC orientated as we've got, mainly because the DC stuff was a lot better, in my opinion, growing up. It's only now that Marvel has taken over and has been, a lot better since the Dark Knight trilogy finished. Marvel's just took the ball and run with it, hasn't it? So it's an interesting subject. It's just something that I've been thinking of for weeks.
I've just, and I need to say this before this thought, it's just popped into my head and it might disappear as quickly. So let me brain dump a bit what I kind of think. So yeah, casual cinema goer will generally not care, but then I think there's an evolution as you go through the nerdverse. So I think from that, if you start to become more interested, you become aware. You're like, oh, right, these are made by Marvel Studios, these are made by Sony, these are made by 20th Century Fox. Okay, there is a difference, and you become aware of it. I think then you could go into like brand loyalty. So you could develop like a preference for one or the other. And there's many more than creators and publishers and whatever, the Marvel and DC. But let's just focus on those two. So you go into brand loyalty and you prefer either DC characters and the tone of it, or you prefer Marvel and the whole tone of that, whether it's comics or whether it's the movies. Then I think beyond that, it can start to get negative. And that's when you start to get such a passionate brand loyalty that you not only just prefer one thing, you absolutely adore one thing, and you absolutely hate on the other thing. Now, you can absolutely love one without hating on the other. But again, I think just with, and social media, I don't think helps with this. You just seem to see a lot of hate one way or the other, don't you? It's like, it becomes this polarizing, almost political thing.
Yeah. And I suppose, Dave, we're both football fans of different teams. and we have plenty of banter with each other, and you know, there's plenty of abuse going on the WhatsApp groups that we have. But it's the same thing, isn't it? You're loyal to what you love and support, what you know. So yeah, that's a very good point, to be fair.
Yeah, and like, so, you know, there are going to be players who you think play for your team who are better than players that I think play for my team. And I think players for my team are better than players that play for yours. So, and it's only when you get to extremes that you might agree. You know, if someone's really, really good, or if you're Chris Smalling.
Now, David, let's not go down this route.
This could be a big rabbit hole.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you there either, Dave, or if your name's Phil Jones. But anyway, moving swiftly on. No, very good point, Dave. Very well articulated there, my friend. Now, also, Dave, I've got to say, I've got my tickets, Dave. Have you got yours as well? It's all on for the Avengers. It's on. I know people might be sick of us talking about it, but this little minute trailer they've dropped recently is amazing for me. This is just something. Oh, I can't wait, Dave. I said on Twitter, I'm going to shed a tear. I am not going to even hold back on this one. If I'm a blubbering mess at the end of this, then they've definitely done the job, because I cannot. I think for me, it's the most anticipated film I've probably watched in about 10 years. Even I think maybe The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Returns, Dave, were the ones that was really, you know, this is just, I don't know what it is about it, but there's just something there that I'm just yearning to see that film. I cannot wait.
I don't think there's been a film in history that has had this kind of build-up. Genuinely, I don't think there is. If you think about it, we've had 21 movies to get us to this point.
Yeah.
This is going to be the 22nd movie that will draw a line under all of what has gone on before it. And you could say it's really only 20 before, because The Incredible Hulk doesn't really fit into anything. But, you know, I can't think of an equivalent thing. Now, I guess if you think, okay, so not sure I can quite remember it, and, you know, the internet wasn't what it was, you know, it didn't exist at the time. But something like Return of the Jedi, well, people were going mad for that. Dark Knight Rises, I think, there was a lot of anticipation for that. I will say, you know, you kind of look a bit daft saying it now, but Phantom Menace. I mean, so, you know, the first one of the Star Wars prequels, I was absolutely, you know, chomping at the bit to go and watch that. And then The Matrix turned out to be the film of that year. But anyway, I can't think of anything else that, you know, has had such a catalogue of movies to build up to it. And then, like I say, the 22nd movie, it all ties together. Not necessarily seamlessly, and, you know, there's issues with different ones in that. But I can't think of anything else. And I was, you know, I'm normally fairly laid back with these things, and I guess leading up to the day when the tickets were going to go on sale, I was kind of like, I'll kind of casually, you know, saunter over to the laptop, and maybe if I've got 5 minutes, I'll have a look if I can get some tickets. And sort of went from that phase to more of a gibbering mess. And as the various cinema sites were crashing because people were trying to get onto it, I got more and more stressed out, and I'm like, I need to see this. I need the tickets. I need to see it on the first day. And so I did get a bit manic there. So, but we got them in the end, and so really, really looking forward to it. I did see a few cinemas are putting on double features, aren't they?
Yes, they are. The back-to-back Infinity War and Endgame, Dave. You get a 15-minute break in between them both. Yeah,
you see, I'm 3 hours is a long time. 5 hours.
I'd probably go for it. I mean,
I'm not sure I could do that.
I wanted to do the midnight launch for this, Dave, I'll be honest with you. And I've literally gone my own, and I don't want to take any time off because I'm actually off a day before it, because it's the weekend after Easter. So I was sort of thinking, if we had more days, I'd have took it off and gone on the Wednesday, because I'm off the Tuesday as well. But it's Wednesday into Thursday, and I'm like, I've done this with Star Wars. I will do it with Star Wars Episode 9 this year, because there's a couple of me, you know, my friends that who we've been a bit of a tradition since The Force Awakens. But I would literally be Billy No Mates in there, and I don't think that would bother me one bit, because I'd be absolutely on the ball. But knowing that I get up every day at 3:45, when I did it for the Star Wars Episode 8, I was absolutely on my backside watching that. I mean, really badly watching it. And Rogue One was the same. I was rocking in my chair, and I kept thinking, I'm sure I've just gone there, missed a bit. And it ruined the enjoyment of the film. So as much as I like it, and I really, really would want to go to this, I know logistically, just from my body and the way I am, I'll be up for 24 hours before I go to sleep. So I'll just go the next day. And it's a case of we're on for the R4 showing on the Thursday, the 25th. So, all she wrote, Dave, all she wrote.
Yeah. No, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I thought it was great. It was always going to happen. Well, not always going to happen, but after the opening weekend, it was pretty certain it would happen. But Captain Marvel's broke $1 billion at the box office, which I think is fantastic. Now, the interesting thing... And this is, when I talk about the evolution through the nerdverse, I think I'm probably a bit higher than level 1 here, because I thought, well, that's interesting again. So the likes of Aquaman has done it. Venom broke $1 billion, didn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought there was all this controversy before it came out. There was loads of people saying, "Oh, this is rubbish," and Rotten Tomatoes even took off the, audience wants to go see it metric. And I thought, right, what would be interesting if I just have a quick look at Rotten Tomatoes to see how that audience score is now. Well, the tomato meter, the critic meter, is 78%. So there's 442 reviews there. Now, quite often when we've looked at movies, the audience score is higher than the critic score, isn't it?
Yep.
Not for this one. This is 59% audience score, which is not very good, really. It's not fresh. That is from 78,384 reviews from the audience.
Wow.
Now, I thought, because again, when things come out on streaming services and whatever, you get more and more people, saying they liked it or not, because more and more people see it at home, don't they, on Netflix and whatever. So I couldn't really compare it with too much else other than Avengers Infinity War. So, okay, it's out on DVD, so it's not quite like for like, but it's not out on the streaming services yet. So I went to look at that. Audience score, 91%. But the interesting thing is, the user ratings were 54,248. So basically, Captain Marvel has had nearly 25,000 more audience scores than Avengers Infinity War. Now, I'm not buying that all those 25,000 votes, are real people. And, if you're a Marvel head, or even a casual cinema goer voting on this, surely it's going to be, you're going to vote on Captain Marvel and you're going to vote on Infinity War, aren't you? So, I just don't buy it. It doesn't stack up for me that more people would vote for Captain Marvel than Infinity War. And the fact that it's a very average score just says to me that, it has been hijacked.
Yeah, it has. I mean, the thing for me, David, this is, I won't go on my soapbox too much, because obviously the reason she's got that response, Brie Larson, is because of her political views. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with me, what she thinks. I have no race in that, no horse in that race at all, so it doesn't really matter to me what her political views are on anybody. But what bugs me more than anything with these actors, actresses, all these people seem to think that just because they're on TV, they have a right to, because they've got a platform for people to listen, they have a right to jump on this sort of political thing. And I just think sometimes just stay in your lane. You see it at the Oscars. I mean, the other year, Leonardo DiCaprio starts going on about the famine in some country when he's accepting an award. Fantastic. He does a lot of stuff for charity. I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that for anybody. I've seen Glenn Close doing it, and it's like, I don't care. You're that self-indulgent that you feel that you need to sort of start patting yourself on the back with these things and make, a popularity contest even more than how popular you are, because people recognise you in the street or in Starbucks and that. It just bugs me, Dave. And I'm not just digging Brie Larson. I'm digging these loads of actors and actresses who just absolutely think that they're politicians. I know Arnie did it, and he was the governor of California, and he's still keeps to it, to be fair, and he was an immigrant who came into the US and he loves America and everything. But it's like, if they're that passionate about it, then do something about getting into politics. It doesn't mean you're, and that's why she's got this backlash, unfortunately, because as soon as you take things in a political direction, there's always going to be someone who doesn't like that, Dave, and that's exactly what's happened. And it can also, to be fair to her, it could have actually been career suicide in some respects. It's not. Obviously, we know she's going to be Avengers and that, but in some respects, some people are like, we can't touch her. And it might be something in the future. Directors go, I'm not sure the backlash. We don't want the film scoring negatively when it's actually, well-produced, well-directed production. That could happen. And I don't know about you, Dave, it just bugs the heck out of me. That absolutely does.
We could go off on a massive tangent on this, but it's interesting. I'm genuinely interested in it. So it doesn't. Okay, I guess there's two separate things because these actresses, musicians, they've got a platform. They can raise awareness. They have a louder voice than any, than us normal folk. Now, if they're speaking about things, political situations that they don't really understand, then that grates a bit. But if they're trying to, if they are genuinely affiliated with some kind of charity or something like that, Hermione, she's a UN ambassador, isn't she? As one that springs to mind. I don't think that's a bad thing. If they're raising awareness of something and trying to, drum up some donations for stuff, I kind of think that's okay. I guess the thing that comes to mind is the big difference with what Brie Larson had said, I think, was, she'd said that there basically has to be more diversity, in the whole film industry and, the critics. So everyone that she speaks to is a white male. That's a bit like me walking into the comic shop and going, you know what? Stinks of BO and nerds in here.
Yeah.
It's like, or getting turkeys to vote for Christmas. You're dissing the very people who can influence the wider audience there, So a lot of, people had sort of taken exception to that. Now, I mean, you and I are in that same group as, the privileged kind of white majority. And so I guess, I don't see there being that much of a problem. I also think, a lot of the times they're asked the questions as well. So if they're going out, if they've got their awards speech prepared and everything, and then they start going on about a particular cause that they're behind or whatever, that's a bit different. But sometimes, they're just asked these questions.
Yeah, but you are right. I suppose you can't lie with these things. What we're getting at as well, Dave, there's a presenter in the UK. Obviously, we have a lot of overseas listeners, guys, but there's a presenter called Rachel Riley who's on a show called Countdown. And I saw her on Twitter trending this week. Boycott Rachel Riley, it said. That was the trend. It was the number one trend on Twitter. So I clicked on it, and basically she's...
The twend on Twitter.
The twend on... Quine Day. Remember Tony Farino, Phil's and Horses? Quine.
I thought I saw a putty cat.
I did. Yeah, that was...
Tweety pie.
Yeah. And she basically gone at the UK government stuff with Brexit, and then she'd gone at Donald Trump. Well, that was it. Then, wasn't it? Everyone just went at boycott, disgusting. And I didn't go too in depth with it, but I'm just saying that one thing on a platform. Well, we've seen it with James Gunn, the jokes and things like that. He lost his job for a while. Obviously, he's been reinstated now, but that was a social media. That wasn't his political views. That was just something that he did a long time ago. And I don't know. Like I say, we're going on a rabbit hole we shouldn't be going down, but it just frustrates the heck out of me. And unfortunately, Brie Larson, I'm not saying she's not wrong, Dave, because I've got an 18-year-old daughter. I've got, married. I've got 5 sisters. I know the struggles that they have in the world, and unfortunately, my wife don't work at a motor company, but and that's mainly a male predominant. It's like Sam always says, the wife, it's like something out the Sweeney from the 1970s. It's ridiculous the way they are, but stay in your lane. Come on, you know what I mean? That's what I think for everyone, not just her, everyone. So I think the backlash, unfortunately, is and I've got a big gob in real life, so I know what gets me in trouble, Dave.
Yeah, and I guess, to the backdrop of, the whole Captain Marvel versus Captain Marvel thing as well. I think, that's probably added to it a bit as well. So that's enough politics from us, I think.
Yes.
we don't need to get into that. So, Chris, do you want to go ahead and tell us what we're going to review?
Yeah, so we had a good chat, me and you, Dave, and after Paul was on episode 61 from DC World, he mentioned the series Doom Patrol, which we had on our review with Paul, talked about because they were on episode 4 of Titans. So they had their own spin-off, and we've actually been watching it. So we're going to review the Doom Patrol, but only going to review episodes 1 to 3 at the moment and go through that. So Dave, what have you got comic book background, please?
Yep. So Doom Patrol. First of all, I'm going to ask the question. I'm guessing you've never heard of these, Chris?
Never.
Well, you'd be in the majority, I think, and, there's not that many people who've read it, I don't think. But they did make their debut back in My Greatest Adventure number 80, back in June 1963. And I quite often I'll just call out the year, but I'm calling out the month specifically, and I'll come back to why in a minute. They were created by writers Arnold Drake, Bob Haney, and artist Bruno Premiani. Now, the original team consisted of Chief Niles Calder, Rita Farr, who's Elastigirl, and Larry Trainer, who's Negative Man. Now, Cliff Steele's Robot Man appeared after about 3 issues. Now, from that original team, there have been a number of incarnations, and Robot Man is really the only person who's been that solid mainstay throughout all those different iterations. And there's a lot of similarities between this group of dysfunctional superheroes and Marvel's X-Men. Now, I mentioned the first issue came out in June 1963. X-Men number 1 came out in September 1963, so just 3 months after Doom Patrol hit the stands. So it would seem to be too short of a lead time to get a comic out, so something that hits the stands, you got Stan Lee wandering past thinking, right, I'll just steal that. 3 months seems to be too short. But in 2005, Arnold Drake gave an interview, and so I'll quote him word for word on this. I've become more and more convinced that Stan Lee knowingly stole the X-Men from Doom Patrol. Over the years, I learned that an awful lot of writers and artists were working serendipitously between Marvel and DC. Therefore, from when I first brought the idea into DC editor Murray Boltinoff's office, it would have been easy for someone to walk over and hear that I was working on a story about a bunch of reluctant superheroes who are led by a man in a wheelchair. So over the years, I began to feel Stan had more lead time than I realized. He may well have had 4, 5, or even 6 months. Now, a couple of years later, and unfortunately, Drake actually passed away in this year, so 2007, he seemed to be a little bit more gracious about it. And he said, since we were working in the same vineyards, and if you do enough of that stuff, sooner or later, you kind of look like you're imitating each other. But Chris, I'm going to give you some similarities between Doom Patrol and X-Men, and I'll let you decide, because there's no cast iron proof out there about that X-Men was copied off Doom Patrol, but I'll let you decide, and I'll let the listeners decide. So some of the similarities. Okay, so Doom Patrol and X-Men, they're both led by an authoritarian, wheelchair-bound benefactor, run out of a mansion somewhere. Both teams are made up of outcasts who are hated and feared. And the next couple I just love, to be honest. So Doom Patrol, their tagline was, they were the world's strangest heroes. When the X-Men came out, they were the strangest superheroes of all. And Doom Patrol's villains were the Brotherhood of Evil, and X-Men had the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So I think what do you think, Chris? Do you think that's just working in the same vineyards and just being a coincidence, coming out at roughly the same time, or do you think there's some copying going on there?
I don't get that. What do you mean? I don't understand.
Which bit?
The bit about when you say the names and the taglines.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, Doom Patrol, the world's strangest heroes. You know, like the subtitle, if you think of it that way.
Yeah.
And then X-Men, the strangest superheroes of all.
I'm winding you up, Dave. You damn right. I'm sorry.
I thought, have I cut out on the audio here? What's going on?
All I can say is good old R.I.P. Stan Lee, but I think he's definitely pulled a few back and a few blanks there, Dave. I'm telling you, what an absolute... look,
I think a wily old fox is the phrase that comes to mind.
I think so. And you know how much I love the X-Men. I did mention that I've bought the adamantium version of X-Men with the Wolverine origin films built in for $5.99, all Blu-ray. I've got, you know how much I love Wolverine that day, but I'll tell you now, Stan's just absolutely run with it. And look at the X-Men compared to Doom Patrol, Dave. You know, what a difference. But yeah, it's not even like he's subtly tried to copy him, is he, Dave? He's just absolutely, it's just arranged the words. It's ripped him off. We all love Stan Lee. We all love what he is. He was an innovator. He was the creator of so many universes, and he's bringing them to the screen, especially of these last 10 years or so. You know, fantastic, the creation. Not just him, but all the other guys as well who created him with him. But yeah, that is an absolute beat for beat, just a rip-off, isn't it, Dave? Let's be honest. And
I think, you know, you have to remember back in those early 60s, I mean, 63, they'd already brought out the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Thor, you know, so, you know, they were on the upward curve, but they were still this plucky little company, you know, and DC were this massive powerhouse, or national as it was back then. So I think, yeah, there are definitely a few backhanders. But, you know, the teams, you cannot deny that obviously X-Men has just taken that idea and just run with it. And now I'd say, because both X-Men and Doom Patrol were cancelled. Actually, when that first run of Doom Patrol was cancelled, Chief killed them all off. It was quite a dramatic ending there. But X-Men got cancelled, and what they did was they started to republish a lot of the older stories. And so, you know, it was only really when they brought out Giant Size X-Men, and you had, and after that, you had basically Chris Claremont getting involved. I think that the X-Men really took off in the 70s and 80s. So it took that original idea, and under Chris Claremont's stewardship, that's when they became massively popular. I think it helped that they had, you know, some very marketable characters like Cyclops, like Wolverine, you know, very visual kind of powers and stuff. Whereas Doom Patrol has stayed really as those outcasts and a bit freakish and just a bit all round weird. So they haven't been as commercially successful. But I mean, all I'll wrap it up with, I'll just say, in terms of recommended reading, I think quite honestly, you have to go to the Grant Morrison run, which, you know, is in the late 80s. I mentioned last week that you can get some of this stuff on Amazon Prime Reader if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, or get it on Comixology, or, you know, if you want a hard copy, go and get that. But it is really good. It is a bit weird, bit strange, but a lot of what has come out of this series, you can tell it's got Grant Morrison all over it. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about the series background?
Yeah, so in February 2018, Titans co-creator and producer Jeff Johns revealed that in the 4th episode, they were going to title it Doom Patrol, and he was going to write and introduce the characters of the Doom Patrol team. Now, after this success of this episode, in May 2018, it was announced on the DC Universe streaming service that Doom Patrol would actually get its own spin-off due to the success of Titans, or their episode in Titans. So it was going to be 13 episodes, and it was going to come out in 2019. Now, when they originally cast them for the sort of cameo and potential reoccurring positions, this is where I actually, to be fair, watching it, I did struggle initially, because Niles Calder, the Chief, was played by a guy called Bruno Bichir. April Balby as Rita Farr, she's still Rita Farr. Brendan Fraser, the same. and also a guy called Jake Michaels plays Robot Man, and Brendan Fraser does his voice. And then also Matt Bomer and Dwayne Murphy were Larry Trainer, Negative Man. And they were in the episode 4 of Titans. Now, move forward to July 2018, it was announced that only Balby, who played Rita Farr, Fraser, Robot Man, and Bomer were actually going to stay on to play their part. He was obviously Negative, Larry Trainer, Negative Man. So they announced that Diane Guerrero was going to play Crazy Jane with his 64 different personalities. Jovan Wade was Victor Stone's Cyborg. And then also Alan Tudyk was cast as Eric Morden, Mr. Nobody. Now, Riley Shanahan was cast to replace Michaels to play Robot Man in conjunction with Fraser doing the voiceover as well, with Fraser acting as the flashback character of Steel when he was before the accident and that around 88 as he was the NASCAR driver. And then also what threw me more than anything was Timothy Dalton. I didn't twig at first that Timothy Dalton had replaced Bruno Bichir as well as Niles Calder, because that was one thing that I found difficult when I watched the Titan stuff and then the Doom Patrol trailers were out. Timothy Dalton's obviously a more well-exposed actor to the world, obviously playing James Bond and some of his other stuff after that. So that's where I had a few things a bit different, changed slightly different. And then obviously Matthew Zuck was cast to replace Murphy as Larry Trainer, Negative Man. Again, Trainer's voice was portrayed by Bowman in the flashbacks, and that carried on into from the Titans as well. So it's a slightly weird way they did it, because literally Titans came out and then they recast them. I know it sort of felt like the Titans episode was a bit of a pilot in some respects, but obviously the Brendan Fraser character was something that stuck out. We watched the Titans episode as well, episode 4. Now,
if I can just jump in there, though, I guess because we only did Titans a month or two ago, whereas it was out in the US last year, wasn't it? So it feels to us like, they've just shot this tester episode and then we're watching Doom Patrol pretty soon after. It's like they've changed almost all the actors. So I guess, though, there was probably more of a time span than it feels to both you and I.
Yeah, you're probably right, because it's fresh and we try and review these things straight away, don't we? Which we do with everything. It's, we love that. It's a bit difficult, and I know the description of that's quite convoluted as well, but I think the mainstay was Brendan Fraser, Dave, was the sort of pinnacle of it all with the Titans episode, and that's where I think they thought, right, we need to run with this. So that's good that they kept him on as well, and obviously he was a major actor in his day, wasn't he? George of the Jungle and a lot of the other stuff he did as well, The Mummy and that. He was like Hollywood A-list for quite a while, so it's great to see him getting back on his feet as such and getting back out there, which is great for a lot of these actors as they get older. They do seem to get a renaissance, especially the streaming service, so fair play to him. Now, principal photography started in August 30th, 2018, and that was in Georgia. All that sort of finished around December 2018. It initially premiered on the DC streaming service on the 15th of Feb 2019, with episodes releasing all the way up to May 24th of 2019 as well. So it's basically going out each week. Now, the series actually was run for 15 episodes, not 13, which was what the initial run was taken up for. On Rotten Tomatoes, which is really good, it's got a certified fresh approval rating of 94%, Dave, which is fantastic. And that's based on 36 reviews. That actually beats, this again is our highest reviewed TV film. It's got a user rating of 7.84 out of 10, which is good. On Metacritic, which for some reason always reviews slightly lower than Rotten Tomatoes, it's 69% out of 100. But again, that's only off 11 critics. And bear in mind with this as well, Dave, because we're reviewing the first 3 episodes, the whole season hasn't played out yet on the sort of DC streaming service. So it could change up or down depending on how it goes. If it gets the lull that we felt with some of the Netflix Marvel stuff, it may change and go down, which we'll see how that one plays out. Now, one of the reasons I've gone with this is I've chose IGN, who IGN has a big gamer and massive site, the biggest gaming site in the world, but they also do a lot of TV reviews and movies as well. And they gave Doom Patrol 8.5 out of 10, but the actual tagline they give for their review is really, really good. And I'm quoting him here, Doom Patrol is the best reason yet to sign up for DC streaming service. Doom Patrol offers a wicked sense of humour with heart, wit and tragedy to spare. The cast works incredibly well to form an entertaining, dysfunctional family. And I think that is a great review, Dave. I don't usually quote different sites or individual reviews, but I just felt that was something that stood out for this as well. So really good, especially with what you were saying earlier about the X-Men comparisons as well, because that's what you get with a lot of the X-Men stuff as well. So, and that's about it.
Yeah. No, very good, very good. Well, should we go into our review then?
Let's go.
Hey, this is Danielle.
And this is Sarah.
And we're the Mysterious Midwest Podcast.
That's us.
We're here.
So we'll be dropping episodes weekly about the ookiest and spookiest happenings in the Midwest.
From cryptids to hauntings and creatures that go bump in the night.
Be sure to join us for a laugh, because we do a lot of that.
Yup.
And a drink while we talk about the strange and unusual.
You can find us at mysteriousmidwestpod.com, and we're downloadable on wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And we are all about that social media, so feel free to find us.
Find us
on Facebook at Mysterious Midwest Podcast.
Yep, we're there.
Instagram at Mysterious Midwest.
Yep, lots of selfies.
And don't forget about Twitter at Mist Midwest.
Yes, please. Find us on all the things. You won't regret it even a little bit.
Not at all. Hey, guys, say on your way home tonight, watch for deer.
Okay, bye.
For the pilot. After a severe accident, Cliff Steele wakes up a changed man in the house of Dr. Niles Calder and his Doom Patrol. Fantastic synopsis there, IMDB. This is why we don't normally do it, but we'll make an exception for this week. So actually, we don't start there, do we? We start in Paraguay back in 1948. And I don't know about you, Chris, but I got kind of a little bit of a Hellboy feel. You know, you've got someone, we've got Mr. Morden, and, you know, he's working with this Nazi scientist, and, you know, something's obviously going to happen there. So, I mean, what did you make to, before we get on to Cliff and Robot Man, because I think we'll spend a bit of time on him. I mean, what did you make to that opening scene?
To me, it had a feel, Dave, of some of the Wolverine origin films where we've gone back in time, the experimentation element, and also it felt a little bit like Wonder Woman as well, Dave. You know, when after she does the battle across the wall thing, and then she goes and the actual God reveals himself, doesn't he? And we've got this sort of, she's chasing the German Nazis and that through it. It feels a little bit like that, to be fair. Obviously, it's within a DC universe, but the tone's really, really good. And I think it sets it up it's very intriguing at the start, very intriguing the way they do this. And I think they set up the characters really well, especially with this as well. I mean, he's got the Nazi scientist, Heinrich von Fuchs, so a fantastic name, top baddie name, Dave, as well, which is brilliant. So, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd stayed away generally. I didn't know going into it. I'd heard that Brendan Fraser was in it, of course, he's a huge name, but I do like Alan Tudyk. You know, I'd seen him in Firefly originally. I think for the first thing, he was the robot, wasn't he? He was K2SO in Rogue One. Had some really good lines. You know, one I like is that just a silly little movie, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Again, just a silly little movie, but I quite like him. And so it was quite obvious, I think, from just that bit. I didn't quite know where it was going, to be honest, but it was obvious he was going to show up later again.
Yeah.
But I guess the other thing that jumped out at me was the narration. So I loved the way it's almost, you know, when Deadpool started off and you get the credits rolling and, you know, you get, some douchebag, you know, created this, and, you know, it was all those opening credits were just taking the mickey, weren't they?
Yeah.
And here you've got a narrator who's talking to you, the audience, and it's like, oh no, it's another superhero movie. This is just what we need, you know. I thought that was really good, just completely breaking the fourth wall and just poking fun at themselves. And I thought, you know, so straight away I'm in there and I'm like, all right, this is going to be something a bit different, I think.
Yeah, and I think it needed to be as well. It needs to be something different because obviously, for me, Titan started so well, so strong. We know it's within the same universe, and it fell off in my review. I give it a Hall of Justice. I enjoyed it, but I just felt the violence just went too one way continually. It was very samey. It went from, teen sort of Smallville type series to a, absolute Quentin Tarantino situation. It didn't really make any sense, but this was a slow burner for me, Dave, I've got to say. And I think the way they introduced the characters, it made you care about them. And there was an intrigue there of how the characters were going to build and what was in store for him. And again, we did get a slight introduction to him in Titans, so fair enough if you've never seen Titans, if you listen to this one. But I think it put more meat on the bones, because I wasn't sure watching Titans whether they were good or bad, Dave, I'll be honest with you. Especially Niles Calder as well. He wasn't really portrayed in a great light, was he, to be fair, in Titans. So this for me was a great thing to have their own origin story, to tell it, and I think they told it very well.
Yeah, and I think I said it at the time as well. I mean, I couldn't get over the fact that it was such an obvious plug for another spin-off.
Yeah.
And so it was grating on me when they were having the whole Doom Patrol interaction. I was like, well, you're only doing this to spin something off. There's nothing driving the story forward at all. And you mentioned that kind of Netflix lull. Well, although I kind of enjoyed the episode, I did feel, well, for the overall plot, you're not really driving anything forward. You could say that, well, okay, Beast Boy ended up joining the team. He'd been part of Doom Patrol and, was joining in the Titans. So that was the thing that changed. But it just grated on me that it was such an obvious plug for something else. Yeah,
of course it was. And you'd mentioned that before we even did the podcast, didn't you? That you'd noticed it straight away. It didn't seem as obvious to me, but once you told me there was already a spin-off, I was like, yep, you're completely right. I didn't realise. I just thought they were throwaway characters within this series, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, and I have to say, I think, let's get on to Robot Man, because once we're out of Paraguay, we get introduced to Brendan Fraser's character, don't we? Cliff Steele.
Yeah.
Again, from that Silver Age, the names are just brilliant. Cliff Steele, he just ends up being in a robot body. Brilliant. One of the X-Men characters is called Richter, and he creates earthquakes. It's just like brilliant. But anyway, so I don't remember any scenes like this opening one from George of the Jungle.
No, not at all. I think as well I'm trying to. I'm not into body shaming, Dave. I'm not, and I'm trying so hard. But even I struggled to believe that he was a race driver. Is that, and I'm trying, because I'm someone who's struggled with my weight all my life, up and down. I'm a trainer and everything now because of that, because trying to help people. But even I was watching it thinking, I just don't believe that you're getting away with him being he can drive a NASCAR and he's probably in UK weight, he's probably about 17 stone, so he's about 230, 240 pounds. And I'm thinking, the aerodynamics, and this is where me go off on a complete tangent now, Dave. You'd be like, what is he talking about? But I'm a racing car fan and stuff like that. I'm thinking, there's no way they would let him drive. I know it's it's 1988, but aerodynamics play a big part. Ayrton Senna, people like that. I know it's NASCAR, but you had people even then who were drivers of cars, and you're thinking, he's a big bloke, isn't he? And I know they're saying on the radio to him, like, yeah, come on, big guy, and all this. And I'm thinking, it's just not plausible that they would have somebody that heavy in that sort of car. And
yeah,
that suit does him no favours. And that's all I'm going to say, body shaming. I'm so sorry to do that. But
I mean, let's stick on it a bit, because let's call it out. Unfortunately, especially that George of the Jungle role, he was ripped, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was in great shape. Now, it takes a lot to stay in that shape. It takes a lot on diet. It takes a lot on working out. And I think, obviously, having been off screen for a long time, we haven't seen the evolution of him where he's, like all of us, he's got a little bit older and a little bit soggier.
Yeah.
A little bit spongier.
Yeah, I like that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Very good.
And so it is a little bit of a surprise, isn't it? You see him on screen and it's like, oh, crikey, that, you have changed a little bit. But it's not about that. It is about, purely, Formula One drivers or IndyCar racing drivers, jockeys. You can't ride horses if you're a big guy. That's why, they're generally shorter and don't weigh much. So, when they put so much into the cars and they're trying to, get weight off the car, to give them that, it's all fine margins, isn't it? You just wouldn't have someone that size in a car. And it's also, I know the car is doing the work, but it is physically demanding as well, isn't it? You do have to be an athlete when you're driving. I still remember, now you talk about going for deep cuts. Do you remember when it was a Monaco race going back? This is back to the 80s. Nigel Mansell definitely had the best car, but Ayrton Senna got in front of him. And it was a masterclass from Ayrton Senna, to be honest, because he just made the car very wide. You can only really do that in Monaco. But Mansell was trying desperately to get past him. So he's driving aggressively, looking for any angle. And then at the end, so Ayrton Senna won in the end, but in the end, Mansell could hardly stand. He was absolutely dead on his feet and you could see him rocking about. And so, doing that full time, it doesn't matter, I don't think, what diet you have. You'd still have to be in pretty good shape.
Yes, yeah. And that's the only thing, continuity-wise, I think really got to me. I was just thinking, God, come on. Because there's even a shot of him walking from the back and he turns slightly to the side and he's got a proper, gut on him, like, it feels awful saying this. I really, you know what I mean? But genuinely, I just didn't buy it, Dave. I just didn't. And I'm not saying that he should be absolutely shredded within an inch of his life. He should be Hugh Jackman levels of like 4% body fat, you know what I mean? Eating chicken and rice for the role, but something a bit more believable. I mean, is he a race driver? Obviously, it's 1988. The comics come out, as you say, 1963. But was there any need to tell that story of him as that? He would have been more plausible to be someone who's in the army, or is that what they used for him to become Robot Man in the comics? Was a car crash what made him go that way?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to and I haven't read all Doom Patrol, to be honest, I'm kind of in the majority there. But if you go to that Grant Morrison run, it is fairly early on in that very first comic. So that old race car accident. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of his character, though, he ain't that likable, is he? He does enjoy all the vices.
Yep, yeah. The nanny, he has a bit with the nanny, doesn't he? And his wife nearly catches him. He's up to all sorts, basically. He's not a very likable person. He's very narcissistic, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's very, he's in a loveless marriage. It's obviously not going well there. His wife, seems to try and put him off to make him crash in the first place.
Yeah.
So I thought, again, at this point, I'm not really liking Cliff here, I have to say.
No, and I love the fact that he's driving at about 170, 180 miles an hour, but you can pick out in the crowd his wife grabbing the crotch of his guy on the mic.
Yeah, as if he's going about 30 miles an hour or something.
yeah, you can spot that from it. You can spot that right across the NASCAR ring because they just drive in a circle at NASCAR. I used to watch it for years ago. So yeah, but again, I know what it's for. It's to tell the story, and it does cause an accident, doesn't he? He absolutely loses it, and we then fast forward 7 years because obviously it's 88, it's 1995 now, and he awakes, doesn't he? And he's got Niles Calder in front of him speaking to him, and I love Dave. I've got to say, now that he's Robot Man, I love the accent, the mouth, the way they use that sort of echoed voice, like he's talking from within the structure, because he's just a hollow man, isn't he? A hollow tin man. I think that's really good. I think that's something that really stands out with his character, and it makes his dialogue really funny in places.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I thought the way they unfolded, from his perspective what was going on, because you were in 88 when this accident happened. I'll just break off for a second there. Do you see what happens after that? Because I can't remember. You do see he didn't actually have his accident there.
No, he had it with his wife in the car. Then his wife and child.
Yeah. Okay. So it was in the first three then, because I didn't want to see that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Now we do find out a bit later, don't we? That's not where he had his accident, but when he wakes up and he sees the calendar, he can zoom in and he sees it's 1995. It's like, what the hell's going on, And, it ends up being Rita, doesn't it, who comes and shows him his face. And again, you're sort of seeing it through his eyes. He's a guy who's enjoyed life, a bit too much. And suddenly it looks like the Tin Man out of The Wizard of Oz.
He does, and that's where we get introduced to Rita, don't we? And we get her little backstory there, Dave, as well, don't we? I think with her, it's just an interesting concept with how they do it. She's filming a scene for a movie in the sort of the Everglades of America, and as she goes along this sort of wooden platform to the edge of it, she just falls down, doesn't she? And she's sort of drowning, and then this thing comes inside her, doesn't it? And she gets rescued in that, but when she wakes free, when she gets up, and she breaks free and the sort of the drowning, she's been saved. The whole crew in that are all like absolutely mortified, aren't they? Because her face is just so deformed and let's see, a transformation is just literally from the absolutely beautiful woman to this sort of hideous monsters-like face, hasn't it? Which is just come from nowhere. So I like the way this sort of, like you say, this family, this disjointed family come together, and it tells the origin stories in this first episode really well.
Yeah, and again though, she's not very likable, is she? She's not. No. She's quite self-centered. She's very vain. She's just not likable at all, and so focused on her looks and everything. And so even though she's not that nice a person, you could kind of feel a bit sorry for her that, someone like that who's so focused on how they look suddenly, becomes this kind of grotesque monster-like figure.
Yeah, and I think as well, what it's teaching everyone, because all the characters have got some real nasty traits before they have their accident or whatever they have. It's about being humble, in it. What's on the outside is not always nice. What's shown on the outside might look nice, but on the inside is quite horrible. And that's what I think the message is with this, not to get too serious, but that's what I feel that the writers of the comic were going for, Dave, which is they've sort of picked people from the world going back to the 60s, and obviously we're getting an up-to-date version, but there is a message there somewhere basically saying you should always be humble and nice to people, because otherwise you don't know what's going to happen to you. It's like karma got hold of all of them and given them deformity one way or the other.
There is a character called Karma who appears in later issues, actually. It's funny you use that word, but and funnily enough appears in an X-Men team as well called the New Mutants. And we get introduced to the other chap as well, so Larry Traynor, who's Negative Man, and we can see that he's a pilot. Again, this is all, straight from the comics, and he's obviously, again, got this, none of these are like, it's not like being bit by a radioactive spider, is it? And having some cool powers. These are all the outcasts with kind of powers that you don't really want, aren't they? Yeah,
because, again, as we were mentioning just before about, obviously, Rita being quite a horrible person. Larry's a married guy with a son, but he's having a gay affair, isn't he, with one of the, because he, one of the army, from the Air Force, one of his friends as well, which was it's a good segue off, Dave. It's something I wasn't expecting, to be fair. And again, like you say, he's risking his whole marriage for this. And like I say, it's like karma comes and gets him again, because he obviously has this accident, doesn't he, in his plane when he's riding in the air, and he goes up sort of like above the earth as such, doesn't he? And he loses consciousness and comes to the ground. I'm not believing, other than the fact that he did meet obviously the negative energy in that within his body, but the way that plane comes down, he wouldn't survive. But he also comes out very much like in some of the X-Men films as well, the way his body's absolutely torched, and he's walking in front of everybody, which is
like Deadpool, isn't he?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, like Deadpool. His body's just tarnished and on fire, but he still survives. But the way that plane come down, it's really unbelievable that he survived. And from there, obviously, he gets the bandages on, he's in hospital, and we get his backstory then as well about his family and that, and we get some flashbacks between him and his wife. She even alludes to the fact that, can you stop going out having drinks with the boys? I think she even knows that.
She knows, doesn't she?
Yeah, she knows that he's gay. But again, great, interesting character, really interesting character.
But yeah, so I mean, after that initial shock of Cliff, though, appearing in the robot man body, and realizing he's just a brain on his own, and he can't touch, he can't smell, he can't feel, he can't do anything, he can't eat stuff. And again, not body shaming at all, but he obviously likes to eat quite a lot. And I remember that from the Titans episode that, he was going on about how much he enjoyed that. But I thought a really powerful scene out of this first episode was where he was trying to get up the stairs. He's trying to control the robot body and he just can't get up the stairs. Yes. I just thought that was a really, really powerful moment. And again, so from going from, this Brendan Fraser looking character and not being particularly nice, cheating on his wife, living life to excess, to being in this position and, not being able to get up the stairs. And I thought, I thought when he's struggling with that, again, then I'm empathizing with him a bit more and I'm thinking, oh God, I just can't imagine.
No, you can't, can you? You can't with something like that. But it's telling nice, real stories within the wisecracks and the jokes, and there's always a message with what they're doing. So yeah, I think as well, Dave, I've got to be honest, out of all the characters, it does feel that the first 3 episodes, it's pretty much centered around Robot Man, isn't it? He gets a lot of he steals a lot of the scenes, the dialogue, everything that Brendan Fraser delivers. He's really, really funny and really, really good as well.
Yeah, he's kind of the Wolverine, isn't he?
Yeah.
I got that feeling as well. He definitely gets, a lot of the best lines. And that's not to take away from Brendan Fraser, because I think his delivery is absolutely spot on. And I think just the lines that he comes out with just have me in hysterics. He's just so funny. But yeah, it does seem to focus on him quite a lot. Now, what I would say is, again, I may keep referring, I'll try not to do it too much, but back to that Grant Morrison run. So Crazy Jane is one of the characters that Grant Morrison created when he took over the book. And it's kind of similar in that at that time, Robot Man in the comics had been around for a while, but he was going through a bit of a lull. He was going through, a bit of a depressing time, and he built up a relationship with this person called Crazy Jane. I'm not sure these days you could create a character called Crazy Jane, but there you go. And I thought the way that relationship kind of built up, I think was again really quite powerful. It's obvious, he sees something of what he imagines, his daughter, so at first he thinks, his daughter's dead. And so, that's a big hole in his life. And he sort of takes Crazy Jane under his wing and her 60-odd personalities, doesn't he? And I really like that interaction between those two.
Yeah. And I've got to say, Dave, as well, though, I think Mr. M. Night Shyamalan from the old Glass series of movies, which you've recently reviewed, definitely took some inspiration of Jane's character, because it's an absolute rip-off of her. When we watched Glass before this, I'd said to you, like, they've just ripped off Glass, haven't they? James McAvoy's character, the Beast, and you were like, no, Chris, it's the other way around, I think. Because M. Night Shyamalan, he sees himself as this trailblazer and that, but I think he's done a bit of a Stanley on the Doom Patrol as well, Dave.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'd mentioned as well, hadn't I, there was an X-Men character, Legion. So he's actually Professor X's son. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. Hold on. So there's actually a series for Legion as well. We haven't looked at that yet. But so again, he could have taken inspiration from either either Crazy Jane, or he could have took it from Legion, or I'm sure there's probably other characters out there that have just got multiple personalities. But it's more than multiple personalities, isn't it? Because when a particular personality takes over and is dominant, then she gets the powers of that particular personality as well.
Yeah, because they're talking about one of the later episodes, the third episode, about travelling to, is it Panama or something, and saying it's going to take like 3 weeks or sort of 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden she just pulls out this teleporting thing that she could have done, and she says, "Well, I wasn't that person," or she wasn't in character, sort of thing. So, yeah. Very good character. And I think that's a great expansion of her, to be fair. Not just a case of doing different voices. And I know the Beast is there in the Glass films and that, and he does come out at the end of it. But this is actually something that pushes the story along as well, and actually makes sense. Her schizophrenic personalities actually help in different scenarios.
Yeah. No, it is good. I mean, it pushes the boundaries, doesn't it? Because you sort of think, how many did McAvoy's Beast character have in Glass and Split? Was it 14? It was definitely less than 64, wasn't it? So you just think with 64, crikey, that is a lot. And again, I think, as with James McAvoy, I think the actress does a pretty good job in convincing me those are different people. Now, I guess there is a bit of a difference because, sometimes she's genuinely made up differently, isn't she?
Yes.
She's got the different makeup on, and so there's some effects going on there as well. But still quite impressive to pull that one off.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry.
Are you being lewd?
Yeah, sorry. The 14-year-old child in me came out then, Dave. Sorry. But yeah, so obviously, after we've had this sort of backwards and forwards with all the characters, Jane convinces all the others to go into the town of Cloverton, doesn't she? And while Calder is away, but Rita goes into a bar and she becomes under immense pressure from Jane, and then starts transforming, doesn't she, into the sort of plastic girl, and goes off into the toilet. And the next minute, she just explodes. She's trying to go out. Her leg's all blown up. It's all going all soft and that. And she's got her high heels on, and she just turns into this massive blob of plastic, doesn't she, and destroys this shop front. And for some reason, it just seems to wreak havoc on the whole town, doesn't it, Dave? And she absolutely, Cliff has to stop her in the end, which I thought was great. He picks up he digs like a big hole with his hands, doesn't he, and lifts her up in the air as if to say, you're not going any further. And as she goes up to the top, she drops down, but then Calder appears then, doesn't he, and he's absolutely fuming with him because this town is just absolutely decimated completely.
Yeah. And the chief had said before, hadn't he, you're not ready to go into town, and so they weren't too sure about it. And it was it Hammerhead? Yeah. One of the personalities who were like, no, we're just going into town. And then it all starts to unravel, doesn't it? Larry kind of he has an out-of-body experience as well.
Yeah.
And, Rita, I think she gets to find out, people are saying, the woman who she's speaking to is saying nice things initially, and then, it starts to get not so nice, and that she just loses control. And so that's when she becomes this blob kind of thing. And so yeah, I thought it was a good, again, a little introduction there.
Yeah. And obviously Calder is in the van, he's in the bus, whatever they're in, and he gets confronted, doesn't he, by Morden, who basically opens up a big vortex in front of him, and there's all this thing about, Calder's been trying to protect everyone, and he sort of run away from the problems and the people who are after him. So that's and we get introduced to the donkey properly as well.
So, where the donkey basically farts out some lettering and with Tudyk's character as well. So Mr. Nobody, again we get some fourth wall breaking there. He actually mentions Grant Morrison when he's talking to the chief and that. But yeah, I mean they all get kind of sucked into this, or rather they could get sucked into this vortex. They end up kind of saving the day, but like you say, you've got this donkey left. And you've got, is this the bit where you've got the little cockroach, again, who's being the narrator?
Yeah, because like you say, you mentioned about the fourth wall, so when he says about the DC streaming service as well, I was like, I was laughing so much, thinking this is even worse than Deadpool. It's not like Deadpool's all innuendo, isn't it? And he'll drop stuff in there like the Hugh Jackman stuff, but he doesn't directly say it. There was just no F's given on this. It was just straight in. Like, just not ruin it. It's funny. It's sort of like just breaks the whole thing down. Just to say, you're just watching a TV show, guys. I mean, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and so, before we get on to what happens in the second episode, I just think that this pilot brought me in hook, line and sinker straight off the bat. And I'm not going to, I am going to show my hands a little bit early. I'll give my wrap-up thoughts at the end. But for me, this is a level above where Titans was.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. I agree. I think it's a slow burner. I've got to say, obviously, we've reviewed, when I get into it at the end, the Umbrella Academy, but it's the production and that, for some reason, just seems better than Titans. I enjoyed Titans. I mean, I'd be interested in the second series. There's no doubt about that. But this, for some reason, even though it was initially, or it is an offshoot of Titans, and usually it's an inferior product when they do these sort of things, it feels actually superior, Dave, even after this first episode, even down to the special effects and that. It's almost movie level of special effects. Yeah,
no, I agree. They're very good. So, I mean, getting on to the second, so again, I'll just steal the synopsis from IMDb here. So the episode's called Donkey Patrol. The chief has disappeared, and the only clue that the team has to his whereabouts is an average donkey. Now, what I will say, Chris, before I get into the episode, so we get to meet Cyborg, don't we?
Yes.
Now, Cyborg isn't part of Doom Patrol in the comics, and again, so he appears on here. And I'm thinking, this is a bit weird. But actually, I think it just works. And you know what? I in Justice League, I didn't really care for that Cyborg character. But this guy I quite like.
Yep, I'm with you, because Steppenwolf makes mincemeat of Cyborg in Justice League, doesn't he? And I think as well, Dave, in my opinion, he's put into this to try and glue the universe together, because we do get a lot of stuff where they do mention the Doom Patrol, and you did send me a panel. They mention Superman, they mention Aquaman, don't they, as well? Like they do say, aren't you part of the Justice League? So there's things there to make, and obviously it's on a DC streaming site, really. So if you're going to go on that site, you're fully aware of where the origin of these characters is. But it's very nice the way they actually say it, so them characters are within that universe, and you do get that feeling sometimes thinking, will we actually see it? Like in Titans, we did see Batman eventually, didn't we? Yet it was in a sort of throwback scenario that wasn't in the end real. It was a sort of Dick Grayson was having a bit of an ecstasy moment sort of thing where he was hallucinating. But with this, they don't do that. We know Bruce is mentioned in Titans. With this, there is a possibility of an Aquaman or a Superman character of such potentially being in it, or Batman as well. So yeah, I like that.
See, I don't think they have to be in it to make it feel like a connected universe. And just to share with the listeners, so the panel I sent you was one where Robot Man's basically said, if we had any sense, we'd call Superman. And then the chief says, no, we don't need Superman. And so he kind of does that a little bit with Cyborg, doesn't he? A little bit further into it, where he's like, so do you know Batman?
Yeah.
Well, what's he like? And that's it. That's the only thing to make it feel connected. You have to do just to acknowledge it. You don't actually need Ben Affleck turning up or Superman to turn up. Just acknowledge that you're part of this universe. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But also the reason I think it works with Cyborg coming into it is just the interactions between him and Robot Man. like I say, I thought they were absolutely brilliant. You know, Cliff, he obviously doesn't like old Cyborg, and you can't help but feel, well, that's because he's got all this kind of latest looking cool alien technology. And like I say, Cliff looks like, you know, the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. So, you know, he's got dealt a bit of a rough hand there. So he does like to give him some stick, doesn't he? And when he's, you know, Cyborg's turning up and he's like asking Cliff, you know, what the hell's going on? And he's saying, I'm following the donkey. It's like, what's donkey got to do with it? I don't know, but it's something to do with it, you know? I just thought it was brilliant, though, that interaction between those two.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, he's there, Cyborg, to help them in. His dad's in it. We get a little bit of a backstory with him as well, and his dad's sort of pulling the strings in. Even when he says, I'm going off the radar, his dad still tracks him and that. And I think you're right. I think you're almost waiting for Cliff to pull out the oil like the Tin Man, you know, because he's seized up or something. That I think it's really good. I think... Again, it's Brendan Fraser stealing the scenes, Dave. And I know as Robot Man, it's not Brendan Fraser in the suit, but because of the dialogue and the way he delivers it and the way it's written, it's really funny. The swearing is on point. I mean, obviously, guys, if you've not seen it and there's any, you know, young children that you want to put onto it, just bear in mind that there's a lot of swearing in this. There's a lot of R-rated, 18 in the UK rated swearing, isn't there, Dave? But it's not detriment to the actual story. It's not something you think they're just putting it in there because they're trying to get the rating moved up. It actually works, especially with some of the stuff that Robot Man says. It's fantastic, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if you accidentally stumbled across this and put it on for the kids, I don't think you'd get through the first 5 minutes, would you?
No.
But yeah, if you did get past that, it is a lot of swearing. But and you know, I'm not a fan with using it when it has no impact. You know, when you use it too much, it has no impact. But I think the way he uses the swearing, and again, the way that the voice is married up to the actor who's in the suit, it's just brilliant. Yeah,
it is. It's really good, really good, and everything is on point about Cliff. Everything is on point. I have a slight problem with Rita, I've got to say, Dave, because I don't know what her usage is yet. And we've only watched 3 episodes, so that hopefully will come apparent later on. But there's a couple of things with her character that I'm not 100% bought into, but I'm hoping that I get proven wrong as the series goes on. You know, but these first episodes, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt at the minute because I think that's quite deliberate. I don't think she's got to have some kind of arc. She's not that redeemable, is she, at this minute? You know, she's not particularly nice. She's still at her core. She's very, very vain. You know, so certainly not your classic superhero type who's, you know, he's not Captain America who's jumping on top of a grenade or anything like that. You know, she's definitely in the world for herself and a bit stuck up, really. So, but I'm thinking that's a deliberate move.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'll all become apparent, definitely. Great stuff, though, Dave, great stuff. And obviously, Morden takes Calder into the vortex, like I say, he disappears, and then the whole of that town just is decimated, isn't it? Absolutely gone. You know, it's just wrecked more than anything. You know, and they try and pass it off on the local news, don't they? That it's a storm or an electrical thing, but it just isn't. You just can't take a town up like that and everything that's inside it and take it away. But it just works. Everything works, and the guys, well, Rita especially retires back to the manor, trying to find out where Calder is, if he's going to return. But this episode's quite centred a lot on Larry as well, isn't it? And he's in a turmoil, and we do see him take his bandages off because he's got the bandages and the glasses. And I didn't realise until this episode properly. I thought we had a bit of an Invisible Man type character on, but it's just simply because, as I mentioned earlier on, he's so ravaged by the accident in his body, it's irreparable, so he has to wear the bandages as well.
Yeah, we get Rita, they convince her the donkey has definitely got something to do with this. They don't know what, and because Rita can kind of desolidify herself and get into nooks and crannies, they convince her that she can go inside the donkey. And then you get, I think, again, special effects with this, I think could be better. I think if it was a movie, could be better, where you get to see the eye, as she's going through I don't know if it's the throat or the bowel or what of the donkey. I think she went in via the mouth, didn't she?
Yeah.
But then she gets completely sucked into this new world then, and then gets to see the other side of it. So, I mean, what did you make to this bit?
Very psychedelic, but it just flips it all on its head, doesn't it? Why they've used the donkey, I do not know. But again, very funny, just stupid. So even toilet jokes in the Dave as well, because it's a weird segue off in the story, but it's a necessary one. And I also think it's not somewhere where you go, oh, that's just ridiculous. They've just filled that in. It needs to be shown because they're so dysfunctional and the characters are so unbelievable and what they've been through just to get to the Doom Manor. I like it, Dave. I like it. I think it ramps it up slightly in this episode as well because we've had the origin. We are still getting flashbacks for all the characters. That's throughout the first 3 episodes. But this is setting a story now which is going to go hopefully for the rest of the 15 episodes.
Yeah, no, it's just great though, isn't it? But it's just, it's hard to explain because we haven't really done too much Grant Morrison stuff. It's just mad as a box of frogs.
Yeah.
You're essentially going through this donkey and it ends up being a portal through to this other kind of world. And, it's just a bit mad.
Yeah. Larry, obviously, his energy intervenes with the team. And then the whole town of Cloverton is spit back out, aren't they, of the donkey? And
so in this other world, you get, like, each character is in, they're kind of living flashbacks, aren't they? But
yeah.
It's Mr. Nobody who's controlling it because he's kind of speaking to them as well. It's almost a little bit like Suicide Squad, isn't it? Near the end of that where, each person is living within their own little fantasy, or certainly this kind of dream world. And it ends up being this energy beam that comes out of Larry and essentially destroys everything, takes some names there. And it's actually that electric, this energy being that saves the day, and it's only when he goes around, destroys everything that everyone's spit back out of the donkey.
That sounds so weird when you say that, Dave, listening.
Exactly. And like I say, it's mad as a box of frogs, isn't it? So if you haven't seen it, and you just fancy listening to, what we've been watching this week, it's like, it is just too mad. And when you say it out loud, it's just mad, but it all just works.
It does. Honestly, it really does. It's a well-produced and directed story, and everything about it is just top-notch for me as well, Dave. And, at the end of this, we get Vic's father, who's been in it talking to Vic on and off through sort of like over a sort of FaceTime situation, and it shows him how he helps Vic and that. And he wants Vic to come back, and his dad's called Silas, and he just says to him, no, I'm not coming back. I'm joining this team. And that's when it cuts off at that point because he needs him. His family have created Vic because the scientists aren't his mum and him and the dad. So, yeah, again, very strong episode, Dave. Very, very strong episode and a good way to bring Vic into it as well, Cyborg.
Yeah, and so you weren't sure again, or I wasn't sure at this point, is this another potential spin-off? Are you centering on Cyborg here just to spin him off? Because like I say, I just can't get past that preconception. He's not really part of Doom Patrol in the comics, but no, you find out at the end of episode 2 that, he is going to be part of the team going ahead. And like I say, I wouldn't have thought it going into it, but definitely I'm glad he's sticking around just so he can wind up Robot Man a little bit more.
I think even in these first couple of episodes, he's too good a character just to throw away. there's a story there that needs exploring with him, isn't there? More than what we saw in the Justice League and that, Dave. So, yeah, I like the fact that he's at least sticking around for more than 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, and I tell you what, again, when he's in his little, I say fantasy world, but, you know, when he's having his arm, you know, he's obviously post-accident, he's having his arm worked on by his dad. It's pretty brutal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, to be fair. It really is brutal. And again, it's all in tone with the way it's filmed, the way it's set, the dialogue, everything. Nothing's held back, David. And that's what I like. You know, I do like that. I like the fact that it's obviously not real, and it's not like a Daredevil where there's a realism to it. In that there's not really a lot of superpowers in Daredevil at all, but in this, it just works. It just works within the world. Everything just glues together really, really well. So yeah.
And just to break off for a second. I mean, like I say, we're not quite sure at this point in the series, you know, what's happening with Negative Man, because you get various scenes with this energy being leaving his body, and it completely incapacitates him, doesn't it, when it's off chasing stuff. But could they have got an actor that looked more like Henry Cavill?
I know, unbelievable.
He's a ringer, isn't he? Dead ringer for him.
Yeah, he really is. A good-looking guy, yeah, really is. But fantastic. And it's interesting because as we go into the next one, we get a lot, again, and, you know, Negative Man comes into this, doesn't he, with his family, his wife, his lover. John Bowers is his lover. And yeah, I think I'm hoping, Dave, I've got to say, because I'm not sure, other than, like, I'm really bought into Cliff, I'm hoping that the other characters have a proper resurrection somewhere, or because they don't have a clue about the powers.
Do you mean redemption? Resurrection's when you die and come back to life.
Maybe a mental redemption, Dave. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm getting a bit carried away there. But anyway, even I was thinking of that. Don't keep it in.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Just called me out on it. It was terrible. Yeah, they resurrect them when they're alive. But anyway, I mean, where you can...
They're not dead yet.
They are in my eyes, David. No, you're right. But yeah, you can see, to be fair, there is a superhero DNA there, because obviously Robot Man's only power is he's a robot and he's super strong, isn't he? There's nothing there with him when he's got like something in him. Like obviously Negative Man's got the energy, this electrical being. We know that Rita's got this weird plastic blob that she turns into because she's such a good looking person. It changes into something hideous that you won't think. So there's going to be stuff there that hopefully is going to come up later on in the series, where we do get a bit like what happened at the end of the Umbrella Academy with the brother who has died, hasn't they? And obviously, what's he called? He was talking to him all the way through, and they thought he was mad, didn't they, and everything, and it simply wasn't.
Number 6. I can't remember what his actual name was.
Yeah, but
he was number 6, wasn't he?
And they said he was mad, didn't they, and that, and he obviously wasn't mad. It was something that, at the end, they were all like, oh my God, he's been right all along. So, yeah, I'm hoping it's building to that, which is a classic superhero DNA story, which I hope we get towards the rest of the series.
Yeah. I have to say, though, I mean, as we're in episode 3, I mean, I was trying to think. I guess, you know, we've got the leader there, Timothy Dalton, the chief, but they've used him sparingly, haven't they? And I was trying to think, is he Irish, Timothy Dalton?
I don't know, but that was great. Remember. Is the way you've just said, is he Irish, Dave? I don't know, but
is he Irish? That was unintentional, that.
I don't think so, Dave. Unless he's got Irish origins, I don't know. But I only ever know him as James Bond. I've only ever seen him in other things, and he's played an English guy. I know Pierce Brosnan was Irish, but I don't think Timothy Dalton is.
I think, you know what?
That's what we're thinking of.
This is why I'm the comic guy.
Yeah, but Dave, you better keep in the Irish, because that was fantastic. Is he Irish?
It is absolutely Pierce Brosnan that I'm thinking of.
I just wanted to say he's Roger Moore. He's Scottish, then we've got a full suite.
Oh, well, there's no mistaking Sean Connery's accent, is he? Whether he's a Russian submarine commander, he's a Portuguese swordsman, it's still Scottish, isn't he?
Yeah. Even in The Untouchables, when he's played the Irish copper, he's still Scottish. So yeah, it's very good, Dave.
Hey, I tell you what, as I've been furiously kind of Googling here, he's not Irish, but he ain't English either.
Where's he from? Not Welsh.
He's Welsh, yeah. So there you go. Learned something new there. Timothy Dalton, Welsh. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't think, in terms of this episode 3, I didn't think it was quite as strong as the first 2. I mean, they head off to Paraguay, don't they? And, they're trying to find out what actually happened to Mr. Nobody there. But I can't remember. You get some exploration of Larry and those interactions with, his wife. You can see, he's pretty much cut off his whole, his friends circle, even his special friend there. And so again, you kind of see it's a lonely existence. And I guess that's why you're talking about, there being some redemption about, these other characters, not just Cliff. But yeah, I can't remember too much else about it.
No.
I mean, you get the slight bombshell, don't you? And to be honest, they've done this in the comics with Professor X as well. They go into more that, well, actually, he isn't this nice a person anyway. He's very much done things. He's manipulated situations. So they find out that he was there when Von Fuchs changed Morden into Mr. Nobody, and it's that's a bit of a bombshell. We found out as well, didn't we, that Cliff's daughter isn't dead. As the chief had said. So I think there's a few little hints here. And I guess I'm speaking with a little bit of foresight in what happens in the comics here, which I'm not going to spoil, because they may or may not do this in the series. But yeah, a few little data points there that the chief isn't that wholesome, is he?
No, he's not. And I think in this one, in the first 2 episodes, he seems quite likable. In the actual episode of Titans that he was in, I didn't like the chief one bit, Dave. I did not like him one bit. But it does come out slightly towards the end of this episode that he is, I know it's 2 different actors, but I never got that vibe in the first 2 episodes of this. Whereas in Titans, I thought he was horrible. I was thinking they obviously want to get away from this psycho, and he brings them back, doesn't he, to the mansion in that. So, yeah, it's interesting way they've done it, to be fair.
Yeah. And I guess, they were telling a slightly different story. And again, they were trying to pack in everything, but I mean, he ultimately had Raven strapped down to a table, didn't he? And, he wasn't very nice there, but yeah, I think that's Timothy Dalton in it. You can't help but like him straight off the bat. Great actor. But yeah, he definitely plays that kind of grey character. He's not perfectly wholesome. He's not a baddie either. So I'll be really, really interested where they take that in this series.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I think the 3rd episode, it's good. The first 2 are really strong, but I did get that feeling with Titans, Dave. So I'm hoping that it doesn't go off. I'm hoping we don't get this sort of lull that they all seem to do. It's 15 episodes, this one, which is longer than even Daredevil and that, I think, Dave. So it's going to be interesting to see how they keep my interest as we go through the series. But again, it's strong. It's a strong start, and I'm more than happy with what I've seen, to be fair.
Yeah, and I'm going to predict that it won't have the same Netflix lull. The reason I say that is because I get the feeling that each episode is kind of self-contained. So it's almost like, if you think of something like, I don't know, all the classic TV movies, but I'll pull out Star Trek as an example, where there's kind of an overarching story. Or let's pick on Voyager, Star Trek Voyager. You ever seen that?
Don't like Star Wars one bit, Dave, I've got to say.
Don't like Star Wars, but I asked you about Star Trek.
That's what I meant, and that exactly proves my point.
You
Show,
don't even
DC
acknowledge it.
Yeah, I like the William Shatner Star Trek stuff from being a kid, but I can't stand Star Trek full stop. I'm a Star Wars man all the way.
All right, well, what about the Fall Guy?
Dave, do not slag the Fall Guy off.
No, I'm not. So each episode was self-contained, wasn't it? It was a story, you know.
Yeah.
Columbo. Each episode's a story, but there's an overarching story as well. It feels more like that to me. Whereas, you know, the Netflix stories feel like, you know, it's one story stretched out over 13 episodes, and they have to fill in, you know, the blanks with a lot of detail in the middle.
Almost like, and it's DC property, Smallville. You've got a story there somewhere in the background because it's Clark Kent becoming Superman, but there's just like loads of random episodes that have no way of taking that. The main aim of Smallville is to get him to Superman, you know, but you've got loads of great episodes that don't mean anything. Yeah, you've got Lex Luthor as his friend, and I feel that this is taking the same sort of format. I agree. I think that's a very good point, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, I like I say, I think it's a very strong series. I think I like as well the thing that I actually think about. So what does happen in this? Because you've got Cyborg. He's kind of that rebellious teenager, isn't he? So he's like, you know, I'm going to go off. I'm going to join this team, and I don't need you, Silas. You know, Dad. But then he kind of does.
Yeah.
You know, because he's got all the tech and everything, and you know, they end up they'd got to Paraguay, hadn't they? On this, they'd done a whole road trip, but to get back, you know, Silas just sends them the jet. Yeah. But again, I think I'm trying to think back now. Did they make? I think he said he worked for Star Labs as well.
What's
so
that?
You know, it's kind of a call back to the. You know, I mean, you might know Star Labs from the Arrowverse.
I've never watched any of the Arrow stuff.
Oh, have you not watched any of it? I know we don't review it on the show, but I guess I just assumed you'd have seen a bit of it. I mean, I'm way behind on it, to be honest. But let me.
I know Steve Amell, who plays at Arrow, he's actually announced he's leaving because Oliver McQueen was in Smallville, so I know exactly who the character is, but I've just never... I think I watched about 2 episodes when it first come out, and I know everyone says it's great. I've just never had the time to sit down and watch it, and we're about 8 or 9 series in, aren't we, Dave?
Yeah. I mean, so they'd recently announced that it is going to finish, so I mean, that almost, it's a sense of relief, because I do have aspirations at some point to go back and work my way through it. But you know, there's just so many of them. It's a little bit daunting. But yeah, I mean, Star Labs appears over and over in the DC universe, and so, you know, again, they use it in the Arrowverse. Can't think if they've used it in the movieverse, but again, just another nice little nod. It's a bit like, you know, in the Marvel universe, just referencing S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that. Obviously, completely different organizations. These are more about, you know, it's a scientific kind of lab. But I thought that was a nice little call out there. Again, just like the whole thing, Do You Know Batman? It just makes it feel like it's part of a wider universe. Yeah,
very good. And something I did say when we did The Punisher and Daredevil, there's no mention of the Avengers, not even a reference anywhere, and it's supposed to be within the same timeline and world. So, yeah, it is nice that with DC, they're not afraid to do that. You know, with The Punisher, that it's not even... There's no superpowers or anything, is there, Dave? It's just wanton violence on the street level. So, yeah, it's good that they actually do that with DC.
Yeah, I think they started off, you know, in that very first season of Daredevil, they'd made reference to the incident. You know, Hell's Kitchen was in the state that it was and needing to be rebuilt after, you know, Avengers Assemble in 2012. So at that moment, it kind of felt connected. But the longer it went on, you realise, actually, you know what, this is just completely separate, which I'm okay with. But, you know, don't tell us it's all connected when it's actually not really.
No, not at all. But with this, perfect. So perfect. So Dave, we're sort of at the end of the episode 3 now. Do you want to go into our review?
Let's go for it.
So I honestly cannot remember who's who, Dave. I think it might be me this week first.
Well,
as I say, I can't remember.
I don't know either, but since you volunteered, go ahead.
Yeah, so wasn't sure what to expect of this. We said we were going to review. Once you told me at the end of the Titan review that this was on the radar, and then we spoke to Paul, it pricked me interest. There was an actual interest in the characters that we got in Titans, so I thought, yeah, you know what the heck? It's something different. It's a DC property. Let's see where we go. I wasn't too sure going into, and obviously we're only 3 episodes in, so I can't review it all the way through. But I really enjoyed it. I think Brendan Fraser's the absolute standout. As you mentioned, he's not hyper-aggressive like Wolverine as a Hugh Jackman. He's really the centre of the whole of the X-Men universe for me, with everything that's come before and after. But it just works. The dialogue for him is great. He's funny. Everything he does is a meaning. He's got a lot of redemption behind him. And I think it's really good. I think it's great. I think Rita, I'm not sure about. I'm praying there isn't a lull. Like you said, you don't think there will be. I'm a bit more sceptical. I'm a bit thinking, I can't believe they're going to keep this pace up for 15 episodes. There's got to be something somewhere. And I'm not saying I'm going to look out for it and go, right, I'm scoring it down because of that. But from what I've watched, I've really enjoyed it. Is it as good as the Umbrella Academy? I think the violence in that is better. I think the first 3 episodes of the Umbrella Academy were really strong. I really enjoyed them. I just think with this, it's on the edge one way or the other. So I'm not going to send it to Asgard. I'm going to send it to Atlantis with an asterisk next to it, wanting to come back when I've watched the whole series and then maybe give it an overall review score, Dave, because I think it's got the potential to be one of the best series I've watched, to be fair.
Very good, very good. So I might surprise you here. So I'll say straight off the bat, I think this might be one of the best things DC's ever done. You know, to take this obscure team that, quite honestly, isn't even that popular in the comics world. You know, there are absolutely people, you know, people talk about the Grant Morrison run, but, you know, before and since, they just haven't been that popular. And so they'll reboot the team, and then they come up, and you know, it's like anything, isn't it? You'll have a cult following. So I'm absolutely sure there'll be mad Doom Patrol fans out there, or not mad Doom Patrol fans, but, you know, Doom Patrol fans who are mad for it. But, you know, I wouldn't put myself in that camp. So, you know, I was kind of intrigued about what they'd do. The Titans episode was okay, but it didn't really have me chomping at the bit for a Doom Patrol series, to be honest. So I was a bit surprised when I even found out about it. But straight off the bat, I think they've got everything right in terms of the tone, the humor in it, breaking the fourth wall, you know, just poking fun at themselves, the action. I think the emotion, the sentiment, when you consider these are a team of, you know, none of them have superpowers that are desirable. You know, there's no Wolverines amongst them. There's no Spider-Man. There's no, you know, not even a Batman or, you know, something like that. So I think to take this group of misfits and to bring together this coherent story, you do absolutely care more. I think it does center around Cliff Steele, you know, Robot Man, Brendan Fraser's character, a lot more than the other characters. But I think we've got a lot more episodes to go through. And so I think it's just, you know, this is possibly the early focus. I really like that interaction. Again, it kind of mirrors the comics between Robot Man and Crazy Jane. And I just think, I cannot think of something that is done better than this. Now, I sent Umbrella Academy to Asgard, and obviously that's not quite like for like. We watched the whole season of that. It has had a season 2 confirmed, actually, so that was good news. Yay, we get to watch that one as well. It's a good job, because I've been wound up if it finished like that and we had no conclusion. But I am going to say, I think Doom Patrol is better than Umbrella Academy, for me at least, from these episodes that we've seen. And I just can't think that DC have done anything better. So this is a strong Asgard from me.
Good stuff, Dave. Good stuff. And I can't argue with it, Dave. I've got my asterisk there just to be safe, I think. But I think we should maybe drop it in there in one of our episodes, what we thought the whole series. That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, who knows? If we get a quiet week, I mean, we seem to be peppered with new releases at the minute this year, so we haven't had any quiet weeks yet. But, you know, if people want us to do the rest of the season, we could always do it another time, or again, if we hit a quiet week, we could do it then. But yeah, I'm absolutely invested in this, and not quite as soon as we finish, because I think I want to eat first. But I'm definitely going to carry on working my way through this season.
Yeah, me too. No, fantastic, Dave, and great breakdown of it at the end there. So just before we go, I want to thank everyone as always. Please, if you like the show, you like what me and Dave are all about, if you want to give us a review on iTunes or your podcast hosting site, put in Comics in Motion. And also, if you want to get in contact with the show on Twitter, @ComicsInMotionP. And if you want to email the show, it's comicsinmotionpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you very much, guys, as always, for listening. Hope it pricks your interest to go out there and watch Doom Patrol. You will not be disappointed. And David, I have teed you up so nicely today.
Well, I was just going to say, because you can only get it at the minute on the DC streaming service, can't you? So if you get the app, you know, that's absolutely the way you need to watch it. So it may appear, I mean, on the different cable channels and what have you. But at the minute, if you're going to watch it, that's the way you got to do it. So, Chris, how are you going to lead us out?
I was trying to cut across you then. You were doing it to me. Yeah, very good. I'll be honest with you, Dave, I haven't got a clue. You know, after 67 episodes of this podcast, you'd think that we'd know at the end. And I only think about this at the very end as we're going. And I'm like, oh, no, you know, I know I've got you recently quite a lot, to be fair, but it doesn't even cross my mind, Dave.
It's weird, isn't it? I had the same mental block. And like you say, when you get near the end and you're like, oh, no. Were there any memorable lines?
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. All I'll say to you is, with an average podcast becomes absolutely no responsibility. See you next week.
Each one of them is just bursting with potential.
Used to do this. Crash and die, babe.
I love you too, honey.
Jane.
Jane's not here, you sissy little pig.
She's in a mood.
Which one of her is in a mood?
I've got 64 personalities. Are we really the best people to hunt a supervillain?
This is what the world looks like when we try to live in it.
They are quite doomed.